All righty, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got people assembling, good group assembling it looks like, and we've got some fantastic content to get through. So I'd like to just go ahead and kick things off and get us started. My name is Russ Summers. We are presenting a webinar from Hype to Results, Practical Strategies for AI Enablement of the Field Force with Hallie Lynch from Quantified and Sean Moran from ZS. And let me tell you just a little bit about who these people are. Sean Moran is the global lead for ZS's effectiveness and talent service line, and he focuses on field effectiveness at scale through infusing AI into customer-facing field roles to get the most engaged, motivated, and successful teams. He's got over 20 years of B2B experience in such roles, and he's focused on client organizational capability building, program management, and most importantly, key topic for today is tactical, pragmatic execution, because we are moving well beyond theory here. Also with us, we have Hallie Lynch, VP of Customer Experience from Quantified. She works closely with our customers in designing, launching, and evaluating simulator training programs. She brings over 10 years of experience in services, account, and relationship management across industries. Prior to Quantified, she was in the private bank of JP Morgan. She has a BA in English from Princeton and an MBA from University of Texas at Austin. So hook 'em, Hallie. And with that, let's jump into the content. We're first going to talk briefly about how we are past early adoption in this field. I think this is moving very quickly, and many people may not realize how broadly AI is already being adopted and rolled out in the life sciences industry. Sean will walk us through a framework and a way of thinking that he and ZS use for evaluating what to adopt and how to move forward. And then Hallie will walk us through two case studies from Sanofi and from a global client in terms of using onboarding. But an important thing to note, as I said, we're past the early adopters. About 16% of the market, if you listen to Jeffrey Moore, about 16% is the innovators and the early adopters. And these are people who try new things, who experiment, who oftentimes try new things merely for the sake of trying new things to test whether they're market ready. But we're past that. 53% of respondents believe that we're in the early majority or later stage of adoption. And that's the big part of the market, right? That's 84% of the market. So really what I'd take from this, and this is data from a webinar we did with L10 from polling that audience, what I'd take from this is if you're not adopting and moving quickly, you may be running behind and you may need to move more quickly to catch up. But to make that point and discuss that in detail, I'm going to kick it over to Sean here. So Sean, let me go ahead and give you controls.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much, Russ, Hallie, and the full Quantified team. Very excited for the conversation here today and to share what we're seeing in the market. Now, AI, of course, is disrupting every workflow and industry and job to be done at an accelerating pace. We're definitely getting into it, as Russ was just sharing there. And field roles in life sciences is no different. And so there's a lot of nuance and complexity and regulation and workflow specificity that we need to get right when we think about this. But we're absolutely seeing that when you take AI and technology as a teammate and infuse it into these workflows, we're seeing very significant gains. And now this is coming at a time when there's real pressure on the very existence of these roles, right? We're getting real questions of, do field roles even need to exist going forward? There's omnichannel, there's digital information, customers and healthcare practitioners can pull what they need. Why invest in very expensive and highly trained folks? And what we're seeing at ZS and across the industry is absolutely there's irreplaceable value in the humans, right? In the field roles we have out there, they're providing unique and human needed two-way dialogue, trust, validation, problem solving, helping these customers navigate the ever stressful and dynamic and changing landscape that they're operating in. So absolutely it's needed. Now the form of the role will change. We can't be showing up and throwing up product details of the past. It has to be adding value in this new environment. And, that's all well and good, but we've always been in this world of quantity. We are now able to move off of this world of quantity into quality at scale for the first time, which is really exciting. When you think about not simply did we make the call, did we access the customer, but did we really deliver something of value to that customer? Did we have that two-way interaction to deliver something for them? This has always been very human-centered and manual and time-consuming in the past, right? You had to hope that there was a frontline manager or a coach or an auditor that happened to be in the car with the person at the right time, right? Not likely, statistically speaking, to be the case. Also had to hope there may have been role playing or a sales training event. Also very costly, also very not likely to have just recently happened. COVID further pushed us on the back burner where we were just happy enough that people were out there making the interactions and not really helping them get good at them. So we're able to move to this world of good, of high quality interactions around the customer context, removing the administrative burden of the rep of various forms, whether it be sales, medical, or whatever else it is. Delivering what the customer needs in that moment, right? And being confident in doing it. And so you think about what this means in the workflow, right? There's this sort of airport frowny face experience that we're asking of folks today out in the field, right? When you think about the simple jobs to be done in the middle here, and up front, we're asking them to be analysts, right? Salespeople don't want to be analysts. They want to be working with customers and delivering value for them. We're asking them to sift through reams of data, different tiles and windows on their tablets or desktops, different platforms, different dashboards to figure out what matters for this customer. Forget it, I'll just go talk to them about whatever, right? We're asking them to go in without really any practice unless they happen to have that coach nearby. We're asking them to document and close the loop on what happened out in the field, to follow up and feed that back to our company so we learn, but also to the customer to follow up with them and to make sure we're getting back to their needs in a timely manner. So all of this is quite a bit of pain, and where AI can specifically help with these jobs, right? So upfront, having that AI analyst that's able to synthesize across structured and unstructured data, right? Pulling in what matters relevantly for a given customer you're about to go interact with, right? What are a couple of good questions I can go ask them that tie back to what that customer is thinking, what they've been interacting with, right? How can I have that true value add dialogue versus the one way? The AI coach, which can simulate these customer engagements, right? Be a force multiplier to extend the ability of the coach to be everywhere and allow the rep to practice in a way that isn't awkward because you're not doing it with your boss, that isn't constrained by the human need to be there. The AI assistant that can help close all these feedback loops and synthesize information, feed it back into the system, generate compliant follow-ups, right? All of this can be done in a much more tight package, which leads to this world of 4x. We're seeing a 1-to-4 multiplier, where we're giving each rep, each person in the field, a coach, an analyst, and an assistant on demand in their pocket, right? You think about doing more with less. The already significant expense of each rep, adding headcount is not an option, but adding a very cost-efficient AI version of all these, very much a realistic a path to multiply the team in the field. And so how this breaks down then is very specific use cases or jobs to be done on each of these. And these are things we're seeing out there right now, right? So each of these 5 use cases, we at ZS have solutions. We have great partners like Quantified that have very tested, exciting options to deliver these things in the workflow of the rep, right? This isn't future leaning. This isn't, okay, we should create this stuff. We'll get there. These are things happening now, coaching and training the rep, planning who they should go target and call on next, and then preparing for that next interaction with a 60-second summary of the customer, and then closing that feedback loop and execution. So these are all, very real things. And as you think about how to bring them together, right, a very important point is to do them in a very workflow-centric, connected vision sense, right? We know that reps are inundated by shiny technologies and the latest thing, and go look here, we're going to enable you. Well, I'm disabled because I have so many things to look at now. So the journey here is very much in the UI, right? The user interface and user experience of the rep, whether it be Viva, My Insight, or whatever platform of record you all have this fit right in there and have it build and connect. So we're going to layer use cases and chain them together in ways that build for the reps, that continue to add jobs to be done for them, and continue to create new data along that path that ultimately makes them more effective. And so as an example, right, on a coaching track that we've been seeing with clients, how you might start this journey with what we're calling Coach AI, a starting point can be available data you have in the system today. And so FCRs, field coaching reports, are unstructured data where you have, sort of all this substance gathered of what the dialogue is with the rep. Often that sits in a black box. You know that it happened, you don't know what the quality is. And so AI can actually look at that and create dashboards on, okay, this was the quality, the consistency, the actionability, the immediacy of the feedback provided across our teams and within our teams. So we now know what the quality is and we can work with that going forward. The second step is what Hallie will show shortly here, which is practice. And so the ability to virtually practice is a force multiplier and can extend that resource of the coach, allow span of control to increase, and still provide all of that practice that the reps really need and that feedback in the assessment. A third step can be competency-based conversational assessment in this journey to really unpack, what specific competencies the rep is looking to improve on, what is the evidence that they're improving on those, right, and gather that in the system. So each of these three things I mentioned build on each other. They generate new data, which can then be fed back to the coach to help them be more relevant. And it can lead to this new world of a metrics program that is much more effective in managing what's happening in the field. It can tie to new incentives, new ways of motivating and rewarding folks, new training and development. So the whole paradigm can shift in the ways you can chain these things together. And we're seeing real business results here. So on the left side here, right, very important leading indicators that we are adding value for healthcare practitioners. Two-way discussion time is going up. Capacity for having dialogue and not being sucked into administrative or analytical burden, right, going up. The middle one is super powerful, and I know Hallie has seen it with her clients. Reps at practice, turns out they're good, they're better, they make President's Club more, right? That's a very powerful motivator, and it's real results that show that practice makes, if not perfect, good, which I think all intuitively we get. On the right side, this is decades of research that shows that pulling these effectiveness levers, right, when you multiply out thousands of customer interactions being had daily, lead to real business results. So 5, 10, 15% more effective in each of those thousands of customer calls leads to substantial increases. Now we can compare that to the return on investment. And we're seeing, in the low thousands of dollars per headcount, 2,000, 3,000, 1,500 types of solutions on a per headcount basis, which is extremely modest, reasonable when you think about, overall what the team is trying to do and sort of the expense behind the team. So to improve their effectiveness in this way, very cost effective, substantial business lift, and real results that we're starting to see out there. So I'll close here before handing over to Hallie with a few things that we're learning early on. Right, one is that this is really accelerating in the last 2 months very rapidly, and so I think many clients across all sizes of pharma companies and life sciences have been sifting through all of the new technologies and the options here in AI, but we're really starting to see action being taken, and it all is being taken in a very domain-centric way. So having that deep domain focus on what are the workflows, how does this connect together, how do the chains fit together, what are we trying to do that we can communicate to the field to give them a vision, to the leadership, and to the different functional stakeholders. So we're all in this together. I think the third point on here around aligning the stakeholders on what we're trying to do and the pace we're trying to do, super important. And where we see that, companies are bogging down, or where you may only have one or two of these folks at the table. You may have the global head of training, you may have SFE or commercial ops, but you don't have the business leader. So where you spend 90 minutes or 60 minutes all talking about this together and how we're going to think about this, it can dramatically accelerate the ability to map out those steps, to pick that first brand or that first team you want to start with, that really has a great opportunity to get going, and then start the path. I think the last thing here I'll mention is around a friend to compliance and information security, right? So this is a new world that allows you to really guide compliant behavior and guide the type of messaging and behavior we need to see out there versus the assumptions it's happening or the black box nature it often is today. So we're seeing some real excitement around compliance organizations as well. So I'll pause here. I think best thing to do is to bring this to life with how this actually works. So Hallie, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Sean. And I am excited to share 2 real-life examples of how we deployed AI to solve very real training challenges for our customers, many of which Sean hit on. So let's dive into the first here. We all know that the certification process for pharma organizations is both very important and often very difficult. Every day between FDA approval and sales readiness has a huge cost associated with it. Time is really of the essence. And Sanofi was taking a brand new RSV vaccine to market and wanted to find a way to tackle and really improve the certification process for their field force. They were working with large numbers, around 500 reps, to train and certify, and yet a very small number of trainers to do so. The time needed to certify each rep was meaningful, up to 15 minutes per person, which across a group of 500 is a significant time investment. Time for training itself was also being reduced. One solution could have been to add trainers or throw more humans into the mix, but that really would have only reduced quality control. So overall, it was a highly repetitive, time-consuming process without a whole lot of consistency. And, baseline feedback, qualitative feedback given prior to the initiative really kind of drives this home. As important as certification is, the reps often aren't a fan. They know they need it. They know it's part of their job. They just get frustrated with the process. And we heard this in qualitative feedback, reps commenting on the chaos of certification, the waste of time to certify. And learners really aren't the only ones who are frustrated because the process is difficult. Trainers don't get to spend as much time actually training. Managers don't feel like they spend enough time coaching. So this is a situation that Sanofi was confronted with and the hurdle they were really trying to get past as they sought out an AI solution. So enter Quantified and the simulator. Every rep had access to our platform. We deployed a virtual coach to help learners through the process, as well as a virtual certifier who guided reps through practice sessions and ultimately their certification. In addition to helping speed up certification, the simulator provides objective scoring against a rubric, removing all that human subjectivity that even the best training leaders have to work very hard to eliminate. So let's let Victoria, our coach, speak for herself, and we can take a look at what this experience feels like.
Welcome to Quantified Simulator. I'm Victoria, a quantified AI coach, and I'm excited to share with you a unique and valuable way that we will be working together. For your upcoming PI launch, you will use Simulator to certify on the PI and have the opportunity to improve your presentation skills through deliberate practice. It has been proven that deliberate practice improves performance, but it's not easy to practice conversations on your own. And finding someone who can spare the time to act as a practice partner can be even more difficult. Simulator pairs you up on virtual calls with a variety of AI customers built with personas relevant to your situations. You will role play in order to practice delivering the PI and receive immediate feedback, while an AI coach, yours truly, guides your experience. Once you've completed a few practices, you'll want to keep tabs on your overall progress. Keep an eye on your average score and which message areas need more attention. Your manager will keep tabs on the overall team's progress. Here at Quantified Simulator, the team of virtual customers and I devote all of our energy to helping you achieve your best results by improving how you practice. Quantified Simulator. Practice. Made perfect.
Great. So now that you have a taste of the experience, what were the results? They really speak for themselves. All of the reps were trained and deployed speedily. 250 hours and the associated dollars were saved. There was measurable increase in proficiency and mastery of the material. And the learners found the process streamlined, faster, less frustrating. They commented it was less stressful, easy, provided ample opportunity to practice, built confidence, which I love hearing, and ultimately just they found it far more efficient and accurate. So let's move on to our second case study here. This is a slightly different example from a large global pharma organization. And of course, similar to certification, onboarding new hires has a lot of challenges with waves of trainees going through the process. Getting new hires up to speed, trained well, and deployed quickly is so crucial. But again, there's a limited number of trainers, and the length of time for training is just constantly being reduced. During this really intense period, trainers and managers, they have a ton on their plate. And new hires, of course, have far too many and often conflicting priorities. They need to hit the ground running, but they also need to be trained well, and they really need to know their stuff to be successful in the field. So in the case of new hire training, the simulator was offered as a practice tool to help new hires really practice verbalizing product information and prepare them for their new hire certification. Of course, the question's always going to be, if we give them this technology, if we invest in this, will it even be used, right? And we saw that it really was. Over 3/4 of the new hire class engaged with the simulator, often repeatedly. We saw over 400 practice sessions across the group. And for the first time ever, there was clear data around mastery of content and those new hires who were consistently showing mastery through those high scores. So they used it, but did they just kind of check the box, use it once, or did they actually really work at it? They really worked at it. Prior to having the simulator, new hires were only really allocated a few minutes to spend time practicing with a trainer and kind of hope it was enough. There just wasn't enough time for human-to-human practice or role play. Plus, role play is, no one likes role playing. But now they had a practice tool at their disposal to engage with anytime, anywhere, and really in the safety of their own home or, with plenty of privacy. And what we saw was new hires practicing on average 20 times and engaging with the simulator for between 1 to 3 hours. Again, practicing that key messaging, making sure they knew their stuff. And that's the exact behavior that we want to encourage and we want to see in our new hires. But even if we mandated it, there are not enough trainers to facilitate that many hours of practice, nor would we ever have this level of visibility into how much reps are practicing on their own in their downtime, if they even really have any. So the last thing we're going to look at, and moving from quantity of practice to quality, we know these new hires engaged and worked at it. But did that make a difference in terms of increasing competency, mastery, and retention of material? The results suggest it made a big difference. Average new hires had 84% improvement, with results far beyond that in oncology, which of course is critical and complex. And we really, really saw this improvement in their mastery of material with practice. So in this case, new hires were offered this great practice tool to augment the training they were receiving. They really used this tool. They used it well and saw great results. So I believe I'm going to pass this back to Russ.
Thank you, Hallie. I appreciate it. Let me grab control of the screen again. And we've got some interesting questions rolling in. You've both been very, very eloquent, and I appreciate it. First question is, actually, it's one that might be applicable to either of you. And the question is, as a trainer embraces AI and brings in some of these new tools, whether quantified or other tools, how is their personal role changing? Because many of the things that they did before, for example, role-playing one-on-one, change quite a bit. So how has this affected the personal role of the trainer?
Hallie, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. I see this as allowing trainers to do the most crucial part of their job and do it more frequently, and with kind of more time to focus on it, right? Kind of trainers get into the field because they want to work with humans, they want to help them do their jobs better, they want to have an impact on kind of organizations and on learning, not because they want to sit there and listen to the same material be repeated over and over again and kind of spend hours like certifying or checking the box. So where we see this coming in is to make trainers' lives easier, to take something off their plate that can be done using technology kind of more efficiently, but also to give trainers visibility into learning, to say, this is where your learners are really doing great, or this is where they're struggling. Here's data and insights that you never would have had before. Again, to make the role of the trainer even more effective and rewarding would be my hope.
Yeah, so I agree. I think it's really an exciting time. I recognize the tension underlying that comment of how do I operate? How does the role change? And I think it's exciting in that the way it can elevate the strategic level that the leads in training can operate in, right? Because ultimately all of this system that we've just talked through only works if the AI is in service of the humans. And trainers are inherently great at the human side of things, and so as we think about how do we infuse this more into the workflows, I think the role of the training leads in guiding, doing it in a responsible way only increases. And I'll go back to a comment I made earlier on that cross-functional table, the council, right? It bringing together the business leaders. Virtual practice does get beyond the traditional role in many organizations for the trainer because it gets right into the workflows of the rep, the ability to practice alongside coaches and extend the role of the coach. So there's inherent overlap with the business leads and the sales team that need to be talked through. And so I think it really just elevates the role of the trainer to guide the thinking and work with the business lead counterparts to say, okay, how are we going to stitch this together so it's always human-centered, it's in service of the reps and the coaches, and it's going to be a force multiplier for us.
That makes great intuitive sense, Sean. And there's a follow-up question that actually addresses a little bit more of that tension that you mentioned, and we should frankly dive into it. It's a really simple question. Is there a human in the loop, or is it completely eliminated? And how do you make that decision?
I think maybe it depends on where you're talking about the human being in the loop. But as I sort of started with, I think there's absolutely need for the human to be the center of this model going forward, right? So, there's not a case for we don't need a human. AI bots can just interact with customers, because as humans, we are wired to believe and to trust and to appreciate that partnership that goes along with human-centered dialogue to navigate all of these complexities of life. There's a lot to sort of unpack there, and we're doing research on that separately, whole different or kind of a related but separate discussion. But there's absolutely irreplaceable value in the human being the point of contact to help the customer, the healthcare practitioner, navigate this world. So AI and tech can help them, but there's a reason they need to be there and be a important vehicle and thinker and think on a more problem-solving strategic level than simply being an information provider. I think there are other sides of this, right, where we talked about the needs for human labor can change or be eliminated in part of the workflows. But the human at the center, I think, absolutely is still the key here.
Makes excellent sense. Follow-up question for Hallie based specifically on the adoption case study. We see similar AI-based solutions often being tested and rejected, not achieving adoption. So the question for you is, in working with this specific global client, fundamentally, how did you get the numbers? How did you get that level of adoption? What do you think worked about that?
Yeah, I kind of have two thoughts on that front, and one goes to the human being in the loop, that earlier question, which is we value our training partners and our enablement partners so deeply that we work with them very closely to understand what is the problem you're trying to solve and how can we help you solve it. And designing a program and an experience that meets learners, often sales reps, where they are and fits very tightly into their flow of work. We are trying to understand, like, where can we be most helpful? Where can we add the most value? Once we can unlock that, it actually becomes much easier to get the adoption because we are solving a problem. We are making something about their job or about something they need to do for their job easier. In the example of that certification one, we gave them a completely safe space to practice. There was really none of that nervousness, and not to mention none of the kind of frustration that comes with waiting in line to certify with a human when you haven't had a ton of time to prepare, and an inconsistent and frustrating experience. So we really feel that we offer up often a more rewarding, valuable, efficient replacement for something. And once we can do that, adoption is pretty quick thereafter.
So summarizing, really the secret sauce there is working with them closely and collaborating with the customer to solve the problem rather than, sort of what people sometimes call throwing AI at it, which is assuming you plug it in and it will just work. Sean, what are your thoughts there as you work with customers across, use cases like ours, but also other use cases, in terms of how do you educate them on their need to be involved and to truly collaborate and drive the process?
Yeah, there's certainly some art involved here in sort of bringing, I think part of it is bringing the right people to the table. So I mentioned that stakeholder group, because as the traditional roles change, right? There was that early on question around how is the head of training evolving, right? There are silos around these roles that are naturally being broken down for good reason, right? As we get to a world that's more integrated and the jobs to be done become the center, not you do this, you do that, marketing does this, sales does that, right? So all of that is being blurred, and it makes for, the need to be cross-functional even more important. And so I think, again, we've had experiences with companies where if you're only talking to a head of training, or if you're only talking to an SFE, COE or HQ leader, it can really bog down the conversation because they're bringing a certain frame of reference, and inherently there are colleagues of theirs that also need to weigh in, and or what you will need to do also overlaps with their purvey, their remit. And so I think having them as early on as possible in the thinking, and okay, what does this mean? What needs to change in our workflows, in the way we run the business, and the way we work together, bring that early, right? Then it unlocks so much more in the ability to move forward at pace in this process. So I think that's just again, 60, 90 minutes, get everyone at the table and talk about how this can look and who else need to get involved to allow it to progress, so that it doesn't bog down, because there are many options from different, types of providers, and they're all overwhelming to sort through, frankly. So having a sense of what we're trying to do with a shorter list of credible partners in that journey can help you kind of keep it focused and always come back to what are we trying to do on those few next steps in the use case journey.
Absolutely wise words, beginning with the end in mind, as people used to sometimes say. Follow-up question, if you don't mind, Sean. You've mentioned a couple of times, and I love that you use this framework, the jobs to be done framework. I'm aware that not everybody listening may be familiar with that framework. Could you just give us a quick, what is jobs to be done?
Yeah, so very fundamentally and simply, it's what are the things, the jobs as we're calling it, that role is doing relative to what they're meant to be doing. Why do they exist? Why do we even hire them in the company? Right. So there was an example workflow that I overly simplified and showed for a sales rep working with a healthcare practitioner, and to deliver on the customer experience and to help them navigate what treatment they may provide for their patient. There's a few basic jobs to be done, right? One of them is to figure out who you're going to call. Who am I going to even talk to today? That's a job to be done, right? You can think about how does technology, how does data enable that job? Another one was, what do I go and talk to them about? Sort of preparing for that interaction, right? Call prep or call planning. And so that's another job to be done. So you think about those without getting sort of overly carried away and all of there's sub jobs here, but there usually are 3 or 4 or 5 primary jobs to be done for any role, which tie to why they exist, their core purpose, and why they deliver value for a customer. And if you focus on those and think about how can I make those more effective, more efficient, that's really where you can start to unlock things from an AI and a tech enablement world.
Nice. And again, that keeps very centered on what are we attempting to do here? What's the expected benefit? Hallie, a question for you. Assuming the AI coach is only listening for key phrases or repeating words, we know that we don't want robot reps who just regurgitate claims. And by the way, I subscribe to that. We all know what it's like when somebody's clearly just walking through a script. Can you speak to how the AI coach can help with the artistry of selling and not simply, flag words or count how many times you said a given word? So tell me how that works. It's a really good question, by the way.
Absolutely. It's a great question. And that's one we get, 99% of the time in our conversations. And it's truly not just about what is being said. It's also about how it's being said. We know this. So in addition to kind of looking at the messaging portion of what our learners are saying, we do have the ability to also measure and assess certain skills. We can leverage AI really to say, are there within this delivery, within this message, are there the hallmarkers of confidence, of trustworthiness, of persuasion, of clarity? So we're able to give feedback, not just on you landed these points, great job, but also you delivered with confidence, you could have delivered more clearly, and here's how to do that. So those two things really do come to life side by side, which is crucial for any successful interaction or interpersonal communication.
Makes sense. And a follow-up question, this one is also for you, Hallie, but Sean, feel free to chime in. What's the process like for setting up the tool and getting it going? How do we actually train it and get it to know what to say?
Sure. So we start with materials that customers already have on hand. Typically, if they know what they're looking to train, it's because they're already, or if they know what they're trying to train using the simulator, it's because they're already trying to kind of train it in real life. So we take marketing materials, training guides or study guides, rubrics, if it's the case of a certification, any personas that are already on hand. And we start there and we ingest all that information and we come as close as we can to building that incredibly realistic simulator. Where our partnership with our trainers comes in is making sure that we're all on the right track, making sure that this is something that's going to work for their learners, testing it out when we need to, but we do try to kind of make that lift light. However, and this goes back to something that we talked about earlier, we want that human oversight in the early days because we know that that's crucial in making it a human-centric experience.
Awesome. Final question is for you both. We've got time for one more, and I'm curious to know how you both think about this. There's an inherent tension, and I'm paraphrasing the question, but as you know, I sometimes do that. There can be an inherent tension between scale, training as many people as possible, and, Sean, you mentioned the concept of quality earlier on, the fact that we're going from driving results simply by inputting more quantity into driving results through creating truly a more quality experience. So how do you think, Sean, as you guide clients and Hallie as you guide clients, how do you think about the trade-off between scale, being able to scale and train a large number of people across a massive organization or many, versus the need for quality being defined sometimes very uniquely, not only on a client by client basis, but even on a program by program basis? How do you balance fundamentally scale and the ability to really have that high quality?
So quality has to be paramount, right? I think as soon as you start to drop there and people don't therefore want to use the tool or the use case, then it all falls apart, right? So they have to see the value there. It can't be generic, right? It has to be real in there. So I think that's table stakes. It has to provide real value. Scalability, I think, is a really interesting spectrum where this is a dramatic step forward. Where we're coming from, right, is very manual, very human-centered, extremely non-scalable means of training, right? Nirvana, somewhere down to the far end of the spectrum, is where everything can be quickly customized, N of one. You think about not only for different teams and brands, but for N of one customers. You can have that customer you're about to go talk to recreated fast in a model. Technology is really not quite there yet, right? It's getting there, but where we're at now, it is quite scalable in that for a fraction of the time and cost investment that you'd have to do with the human-centered route, you can train models, as Hallie just described, that are highly relevant for the next brand team in a matter of weeks and get them user tested and accepted. So it is a spectrum here, and we're certainly not at the end game, but I think a dramatic step forward in scalability that this is going after.
So fundamentally, it's not, is it scalable or not? It is a matter of how scalable it is on that spectrum.
That's right.
Yeah, which makes great sense. Hallie, how about you? How do you think about it?
I completely agree with what Sean just said. I think that point where, scalability and quality meet, that's exactly what we're aiming at. Now, regardless of where you are in the country or what team you're on, you're going to get the exact same training and experience as your colleague across the country, and the quality will be the same. And it's not a matter of, oh, I got the good trainer or the best trainer, or my certifier was in a bad mood today, right? Like that human kind of objectivity doesn't have to be part of this experience. And yeah, the scalability is very much there. That is what we're trying to tackle, while maintaining that quality. We're not at the end of one place by any means, but the strides we're making towards that are significant. So I would say if there's a problem that we're looking to solve, this is it.
Awesome. And the other thing is, if you really do want the certifier to be in a bad mood, we could totally make the sim do that for you. But that's a whole, I don't know why you'd want it. That's a whole different thing. We are at time. I would like to very much thank Sean from ZS, Sean Moran, and Hallie Lynch from Quantified for joining us today. I'd like to thank everybody for attending. We will create a recording of this webinar and share it out in the next day or so. So look forward to that. And again, thanks everyone for joining. Sean, Hallie, thank you for a most insightful conversation.
Thank you all.
Much. Thanks again for being here.